In today's video, I'm going to show you how public figures, gurus, influencers all use different psychological persuasion techniques to brainwash you into liking them. This is a highly controversial topic. And the reason why is us as humans like to believe that we are fully in charge of our decisions at all time. We're fully in charge of how we see things, how we perceive things, who we like, who we hang around. But there's evidence out there to show you that that's actually not true. So in today's video, we're going to look at figures like Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. We're going to look at Andrew Tate as well. And we're going to look at how they do this specific psychological tactic to get you to like them. There is a cognitive bias, which means loophole in human thinking, which is called the liking bias. And what the liking bias is when we like somebody, we have a tendency to look at them in a more preferable light, right? What that means is if the liking bias is activated, we have a tendency to follow more what that person says, to obey, to comply to them, right? And it also works in reverse as well. There's also the disliking bias, in where we have the disliking bias activated. We dislike somebody, and as a consequence of that, we have a tendency to ignore any of the good things they do. What that means is we just look negatively upon everything that they do, right? And we don't like anything that they do. Now, there's certain hacks and things to get people to like you, and public figures use them incredibly well. One of the hacks that is very effective is to appear very relatable to someone, to appear almost like them. And politicians, influencers, they know this loophole very well, and they actually have PR campaigns dedicated to appearing very similar to you, appearing that they have this almost sort of likeness to you so that you can relate to them, because nobody wants to relate to a rich person who, you know, is just at the top of their game. It's not relatable to anyone. It doesn't share any similarities. But how they want to be perceived through these media campaigns is very relatable, very similar to you. Now, this is where it gets a little bit controversial. Let's take a look at some of these clips, but all sides play this game. Up first, we have Donald Trump, who is cooking French fries and serving customers in a McDonald's in America. Let's watch a little clip of it.
It's good. We're gonna bring them over directly to this one. Very good.
Bro is draining that oil. Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will. I promise.
Now, when Trump's PR team were asked to comment on why Donald Trump was serving French fries at McDonald's for a day, this is what they said. When asked why Trump made a point to visit McDonald's in Pennsylvania, the campaign spokesman, Stephen Chung, told Forbes he did it because the people of Pennsylvania matter and jobs matter, something Kamala Harris refuses to acknowledge. So by doing this little stunt here, this PR stunt, it appears very relatable to the average working person, because most of the public have worked their way up from some sort of minimum wage job, some sort of job where they've had to deal with customer service and things. So what do? They get Donald Trump doing one of these jobs so that he appears relatable to the average person. The average person struggles. Now, let's look at something that Kamala Harris did.
Better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. You better thank unions for that 5-day work week. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave. Thank unions for your vacation.
So you get the idea, right? Depending on what audience she's speaking to, she is changing her accent to appear more relatable. Somebody's commented here, shit straight out of a South Park episode. Now, the interesting thing about this is this happens all the time. It's got various different names. And I released a YouTube short about this and commented on it and said, you know, this is a way to increase likability, because then depending on what audience you're speaking to, people feel that you are part of the same group and therefore they like you better. There's lots of research into this and why this works. When people feel they are part of the same group, they have a tendency to like you more. And even if you look in schools as well, people with the same sort of mentality, the same sort of interest, all gravitate towards each other, right? Because they feel that the groups have similar characteristics to them, so they fit in that way. So politicians, public figures, they reverse engineer this and say, hey, let's start at the other end, right? Let's get the similarities down first, and then they will like us and therefore they will vote for us. Now, interesting thing, I made a YouTube short on this and I commented on it as well. And the comments on it were very, very interesting. Let's take a look at them. This is the short which featured that very same Kamala Harris clip. And we got two people arguing here. This person says, it's called code switching. It's totally normal, totally common. Move on. Another person replies to them saying, strange comment. Another person replies, it's really not, just telling you how it is. I'm not sure if this person's the same account because they're speaking like it's the same account. Deception is implied, there is none. And then this person responds again saying, what is the purpose of Kamala doing code switching? So do you see what's going on here? Now, this is why persuasion is so hidden. There's research into that people cannot tell when they are being persuaded. So this person here has commented saying this is called code switching. And the person is right, it is called code switching. Code switching is the practice of changing the way you speak, interact, or present yourself in different situations or context. But as this other commenter commented, what is the purpose of Kamala doing code switching here? Well, what does it actually say? Code switching can be a strategy to align with societal expectations and norms. It can also be a way to avoid stereotypes or differential treatment. So it's a way to be relatable to the audience that you're speaking with, right? And we all might change, you know, I'm from quite a rough hometown. We all have slang over there. And when I do go over there, I do use more slang in my speech. However, I'm not a politician speaking to a nation of people trying to influence their vote. You've got to look in these circumstances, and I agree with 114 Prod here, in the sense that the purpose of Kamala doing code switching here is to influence a vote. You've got to look where the incentives are. Why would a person do this, right? And the reason why is to appear more relatable to the audience. Now, we gave two public figures there. We gave Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and both of them do different things to get people to like them. But it's not just politicians that do this. It's used massively in marketing as well. If you think about any marketing, you know, make money online gurus, you will see that they have often rags to riches narratives in their stories, right? A part of their brand will always be rags to riches. They will sell their course and they'll say, you know, I started off with no money, I was broke, it was really, really terrible. And they'll portray themselves as having very significant hardships. And from my time in the online space, I found that a lot of these rags to riches stories, these narratives that are given to you, they're very rarely true, or they're very, very exaggerated. But the thing is, nobody would want to buy a course from a person who has been rich their entire life or been somewhat well off when, you know, they were younger, right? And then built a business while they had already financial security. Nobody wants to hear that story. In fact, it would have the opposite effect and they would lose sales because of it. But a strategically crafted rags to riches story in which a person, you know, said they've come from the bottom. I was once like you. It takes people along on that story. It allows them to resonate with the viewer, right? It also allows them to give the person who's watching, to allow them to have self-belief as well, because it allows them to be inspired. So there's multiple reasons for it, but just know that these rags to riches stories are often crafted. This might be very obvious to you guys, but the people who follow this channel, you guys have probably a slightly different mentality than the rest of the viewers, of the audiences, because you obviously like psychology, you obviously like persuasion stuff. You have a bias yourself to like this stuff and probably be more accepting to this sort of truth. So it not only gets used, this likability bias, in rags to riches stories, but we've seen it with people like Andrew Tate, who discusses the matrix, and it's a matrix that controls society and it keeps you poor. Let's take a little look at one of these videos right now.
The matrix is strong. The system which is designed to keep you as a slave is strong. How could it exist any other way? Because there's very few of them and there's a lot of you. The system is extremely...
You see what he's doing there? There's very few of them. There's lots of us, right? He's trying to appear relatable. Every single person who has, been born into financial hardship or they've really struggled in the early part of their life, this message will resonate with them. And the reason why is it doesn't matter how much responsibility you have as a person or how much accountability you have or strong locus of control, you believe you're in control of everything. There will be a point in time where you've been a little bit weaker and you will have thought to yourself, you know what? I feel like the game's being played on hard mode. I feel like I keep trying and things just don't work out, right? So what he's doing strategically is he's using that. And he's saying it's the matrix which is keeping you weak. And a part of this isn't completely untrue. There is little parts of society which maybe do keep you in the position which you are, right? And it is hard to escape. It's because rules are generally made for the entire population, not just for, a select few people. So it's got to take everyone's feelings into account, right? But basically, what he's doing there is strategically telling a story which relates and you will resonate with. It certainly resonates with me as a man, right? And this increases that liking bias and gets you to like him more so in the future that you will comply with him. Now, here is where it gets controversial. Because when people are told things like you are being influenced at all times, it actually angers people. I know it will anger you guys when you watch videos like this because, again, you probably think a little bit differently. You probably like psychology, you probably understand why persuasion works, and you've probably been watching quite a few of these videos. But one thing is, there's often a denial that you are being persuaded. And the reason why is us humans like to feel like we're 100% in control of our choices, in control of our decisions, in control of the people we like at all times. And that is just often, unfortunately, not the case. And it's very hard, research shows anyway, I'll show you some research in a minute, shows that people often cannot tell why they are being persuaded or how they've come to the decision. They think it was all their own choice. This is a psychological study by Nisbet in 1977 called Telling More Than We Can Know, Verbal Reports on Mental Processes. And it says right here, people often cannot report accurately on the effects of particular stimuli on higher order inference-based responses. Indeed, sometimes they cannot report on the existence of critical stimuli, sometimes cannot report on the existence of their responses, and sometimes cannot report that an inferential process of any kind has occurred. Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, that means that people are often unaware of the influences on their judgments or decisions, even when those influences are huge and present and very impactful on our psyche. And that is what they found when people are getting influenced there. And that whole study was on people's lack of awareness behind the true reasons they make the decisions they do. And if you look at any psychological study where big persuasive elements are present and then they've took place and they've influenced people in a particular direction, often in the debrief afterwards where they're told, hey, this is the reason why you chose option A there. It's because we did all these influencing tactics. Not only do they deny that those persuasive elements had any effect on their own brain, but they actually will say, look, this was definitely my own decision, and they'll justify it. I chose it because of X, Y, and Z, when it was clearly not the case. Here's some more evidence that people cannot tell they're being influenced. This study is called Opinions and Social Pressure. It's a famous study. It's on the back of a famous study anyway by a guy called Solomon Asch, in which they looked at group settings and how people respond when the majority of the group make a decision, a wrong decision, and they see if the participant in it actually conforms to that decision. Like they just agree with them anyway, okay? And they found that all of the yielding subjects underestimated the frequency with which they conformed. Basically, so the people involved in the study who were being persuaded, they continually underestimated how effective that persuasion was. They were just unaware of how persuasive it was. Now, when you look at like politics and public figures who use similarities to get you to resonate with them, so you relate to them, so that you then, agree with what they say, so you then comply with eventually what they need you to. This is a loophole in human understanding, but most people cannot tell this is actually happening, even though they might know at a logical level that it's actually happening. They don't understand really how effective it is. At least that's what the research says. And this is very evident throughout the world. If you look through any sort of domain as well, if you look at, the political domain, it's not that big here in England, but I'll use US as an example. You look at the left versus the right. The people on the left assume the people on the right are all insane. The people on the right assume the people on the left are all full of propaganda and manipulation. Right? They assume that each of their position is the correct one and that they're the only ones who can see clearly. It's very controversial, this is, guys. You look at the same thing for like religion as well. People will hate on the other groups and they will try and justify why their position is the correct one. You look in the health industry, you've got the carnivores, you've got the vegans as well. The vegans think the carnivores are not healthy whatsoever. In fact, they challenge them to get their bloods checked, to get their cholesterol checked. The carnivores, on the other hand, think the vegans are all deficient in nutrients, and they say things like, you're eating an unhealthy diet and you need meat to survive and things like this. Both of them are extreme in their views and think that the other side is completely wrong and they're the only ones that can see objectively, right? So you can see this all around in the world. Now, this is obviously quite a controversial video. People hate to even be somewhat hinted at that they have basically been influenced in some way. They hate to think of it because us as humans, we like to think we're in control of our own decisions, and to be told that perhaps we're not, it gets the ego up, right? It gets you in full denial. I know you guys are a very different audience because I've seen your comments. I've seen how thoughtful your comments are. I've seen that you can look at things a bit more objectively because you obviously like persuasion, so you're geared that way as well. So I think this is such an important topic to cover because any influencer, any guru, any public figure, they can be using these loopholes at any time to get you to like them more, right? They just do something so you resonate with their story, their rags to riches story, who they are as a person, and then you'll adopt their beliefs. But here's what I would say. In a way to defend yourself against this, you have to think, is this person incentivized to get you to like them in some sort of way? So if you have an online course selling guru who is telling you this rags to riches story and there's a few red flags that may not actually be correct, are they doing it because they need you to buy their course? Most likely, because no one's going to buy a person who's been rich all their life's course, right? Because there's probably nothing really to learn there. And the same with, politics and things like this as well. So that is a good way of looking at it through a defensive lens. What does this person get from me liking them? But also as well, understand that this principle is very, very important. We have a tendency to gravitate towards the people who are similar to us, and the people who are similar to us have a tendency to gravitate towards us as well. You can use this if you think it is, in an ethical way. So if you look at like the marketing, if you run in a business and you want to market to people and you think, hey, you know what, I actually have got a backstory here that I think would resonate well with my audience because it's also very similar to them. Don't be afraid to amplify that, to say it, to speak it out loud, because that is how people end up liking you, right? That is a key thing, as long as it's ethical and as long as it's actually true, because if you were to say something which isn't true, that unfortunately takes away from the people, the crowd of people who have maybe had a tough experience, right? It's kind of like in the military, if you imitate a person and pretend you've had all this service in the military when you really haven't, it's like called stolen valor, right? And I suppose like the influencer way of, saying that you had a rags to riches story will be called stolen poverty, right? Or something like that. So we want to respect those people's stories, but make sure that you amplify the bits of the story which are actually relevant to you, that are going to get your audience to buy into you as well. That's a great lesson in marketing, and you will see that all sorts of places who run PR campaigns, who influence audiences, they do this, but you've just got to do it ethically, and you've got to remember the defensive and way to think about things objectively to make sure people aren't trying to trick you as well. Okay, so I hope this video helped. I've went a little bit deeper today to see how people like more of the research side of things, and I want to see how you guys react to that, and if you want to see some more stuff as well. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Give this video, a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Have you ever been influenced before where you thought it was perhaps not in your best interest? I know I certainly have, right? Have you ever used accidentally perhaps the liking bias to build up rapport with someone and it worked out really well for you and you got a really good outcome and you did it completely ethically? Let me know in the comments as well. We'll be creating a persuasion community soon, guys. So I'm just figuring out what that will look like and everything. I've been figuring it out for a few months now, but basically, I just want to know what you guys find interesting, and I'm kind of using the data from these videos to see exactly that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Take it easy and see you in the next one. Have a good weekend.